I'm gonna try one without music. This could be bad. This could be really, really bad. Okay. From my friend Teresa in Austria.
I just lost my bestest friend in the whole world, and I don't know what to do now.
The military is now out on the streets helping.
Do you think that's possible?
Well, give it a go.
All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
I just can't figure out why I'm still single, to be honest. Today is the first day of CF Week here in the UK. What? Oh my god. Is it possible to be allergic to happiness?
I don't know why, I'm just so scared.
Oh my god, guys, I did it. I went to the shops for the first time since March. It's the mental change which is really empowering. Just feeling so in love and content and happy. So even if it only lasts for another 5 seconds, I love it. It's a big realization for me, and I'm so proud of how far I've come. 2020, eh? The year the world changed. I feel like it's incredibly useful in these darkened times to reflect on some of the highlights of 2020. So here are a few of mine. I reached 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. I did an interview for ITV News and BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. I was on a podcast called Straight from the Lungs. I created a video involving 37 characters. What? I cut my hair for the very first time. I finished a wedding video, and I created videos for Project Breathe and the MOD. What? I made lifelong friends, and then right at the end of the year, I met someone. For me, 2020 was also a year of grief, a year of panic attacks, a serious decline in mental health, and yet, at the very end, I fell in love. It's been a strange year. So since Holly passed in March, I felt like I'd been walking on this tightrope, and just the smallest things would push me off balance, and I'd fall to the ground, struggle to get back up, but eventually would get back up onto that tightrope to try and make it to the other side. But I kept losing balance, and every time I fell down, I felt like I was losing a part of myself. The light had gone out, and I was filled with fear and self-doubt until I truly and utterly lost every part of myself. And there's a multitude of reasons which cultivated that, but when November came around, I fell once again, and I didn't get back up. And this is a trigger warning for anyone who is easily triggered by mental health. I recommend skipping to this timestamp here, and I'll give you a few seconds to do so. What is that, Strictly? I never watched Strictly. Anyway, if you'd asked me in November, hey Kate, how's 2020 been for you? I would have said it's been one of the worst years of my life. I was depressed, I just wanted to sleep most of the day. I had a slight health scare, unrelated to cystic fibrosis, but relating to another C word. I felt numb, I felt like I was living in an empty shell. I started to feel like I was suffocating until I just didn't want to be here anymore. If you had asked me in December, hey Kate, how's 2020 been for you? I would tell you it's been one of the best years of my life. Not from a situational point of view, because losing Holly was devastating, but from a personal growth point of view, that's quite a turnaround. And it didn't happen overnight. I spent a lot of time on my mental health, and ultimately I did 5 key things which I will talk about in another video, but I just want to touch upon how that turnaround started. So in November I started experiencing these little pockets of panicking about the direction that I was heading, and I just wanted to be better. I desperately wanted it to stop, and even though these little pockets were brief, it allowed me to message my counsellor, and we agreed to set up a COVID-safe face-to-face session after the November lockdown had ended. Little did we know, obviously, I haven't been back yet because we're still in lockdown. No. And yes, I know I could have done a phone call or a Zoom call, but I just didn't feel comfortable with that. It has to be face-to-face for me. That's just personal preference though. And even though it was 2 weeks away, it almost created a domino effect in my mind. I had created a pinprick of light, of hope, of something that I could hold on to, something that I knew was actually going to help me. And I think by default, my mind felt comfort in that feeling. So it searched for something else which could also create that feeling in the meantime. And then I suddenly remembered something my counsellor said to me a few years ago, which was, if patterns can be broken and behaviours are different, only then can things start to change. And of course, when she was referring to this, she was referring to mental patterns and mental behaviours. But I took it literally because I realised I was stuck in Groundhog Day. I was doing the same thing day in, day out. It was lockdown, of course that's what was going to happen. And it wasn't going to be easy for me to just go out for a walk or for a drive to break that pattern, because that was way too much of a leap in the mindset that I was in. So I toned it down. I went really small, and the next day when I got up, I went down for breakfast and I sat in a different seat. I sat in a different seat, and that was it. And I gently started to create cracks in that pattern, and I noticed how good it felt to sit in a different seat. So throughout the day I became aware of actively trying to break that pattern. Instead of doing something that I'd normally do, I stopped and I was like, how could I do this just slightly different? How can I break that pattern? And another example for this was, instead of facing my mirrors, staring into nothingness whilst I was brushing my teeth, I turned 90 degrees to face the window. And it was just a different perspective for my mind, and it was like a conscious break in that synapses which started to create a change. It was like I was subtly rewiring new connections in my brain by breaking that pattern. So this is what I like to call the boiled egg analogy. The egg is cased in a hard shell and the good stuff is on the inside, right? Now to get to that good stuff you have to break the shell. So if you gently pat the egg with a spoon, it starts to create a crack, and you tap it again and a bigger crack starts to appear, and you're breaking through that barrier every time you ever so gently tap on that egg. And the more taps on the egg, the easier it is to remove that shell, and then you're left with the good stuff. So by making these small little changes, I started to create cracks in this hardened shell which I had felt so rigid in for months, so much so I felt like it was empty inside. But the beautiful truth about that is, no matter what, there is always the good stuff on the inside. And that was just the very beginning of how things started to change, but it set off this chain reaction which allowed me to do other things, which I will go into on another video, I'm sure. Don't get me wrong, I still have a very long way to go. It's gonna take time to make a serious change, and I know even in December I had quite a few breakdowns, and then I'd suddenly panic, like, what if I'd lost all of that progress and gone back to where I was? And then I realised that actually it's impossible to go back to exactly where I was, simply because now I am more aware of what's happening, aware of why things are happening, and aware of getting into that pattern. You know, one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for in 2020 was the heartbreak and the failure, because without that pain, I wouldn't have learned how to adapt. I wouldn't have learned how to grow. I did some serious reflecting, some serious self-analyzation, and that would not have seriously happened if I had not experienced such intense pain. And you know what I realized in 2020? The biggest thing that I realized was I had to experience the lowest of the lows. I had to experience that pain, and more importantly, out of everything, I had to completely and utterly lose myself in order to evolve into something truly beautiful. So let me introduce to you Kate 2.0. I think you're gonna really like her because I met her in December and I am already in love. I'm saying that in a self-care way, not in a egotistical way. I hope that comes across right, otherwise everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah. A massive shout out goes to Craig, Will, James and Tom for supporting me and checking in with me this year, even though I am terrible at replying. You guys stuck by me and I really appreciate it. 2021 is going to be a better year and I hope it will be for you too. So thank you for continuing to support me and watching these videos. It really does mean a lot. I love you all. And of course I will see you in the next one.
This is huge. This is massive. I'm gonna get some wine. Let's have some wine and a pizza and celebrate. That's what I'm gonna do. Bye.